Hi class, so I hope you are fine, doing well. So in the last class we completed union and its territory. That is part 1, part 2 is citizenship and part 3 is fundamental right, that is article 12 to article 35 part 3 fundamental rights. So we are going to start fundamental rights. So fundamental right is a very comprehensive chapter. It will take around 4 to 5 hours. So in this first class I will just give you an overview about fundamental rights so that you can understand the basic contour, the basic skeleton of fundamental rights. So let us start first with the basic definition and introduction of fundamental rights. So as the word suggests, fundamental right, it is made up of two words. The first is fundamental and second one is right. So let us first understand what is the meaning of right. So I told in the first class that polity that emerges from Western philosophy, and Aristotle is said to be the father of polity. But if you see the emergence of Western philosophy, then right from Socrates to Plato to Aristotle, these all people were concerned more about duties, but not about rights. For example, if you see the writing of Aristotle, then you will find that Aristotle supported even this idea that the person who can fulfill their political obligations, their political duties, they are only deserve to be called citizen. And he said that women should not be citizen, children should not be citizen, slaves cannot be citizen, old people cannot be citizen, because these people cannot perform their duty. So Aristotle has entirely defined citizenship in terms of duty towards the state, duty towards the establishment, and there is not at all concern for rights. But if we talk about rights, then the concept of rights emerges from Thomas Hobbes. But in Thomas Hobbes, we find a very peculiar thing about rights. Even though Thomas Hobbes was the first person who started speaking about right, but in Thomas Hobbes, we find only one right, that is right to life. So in Thomas Hobbes, in the writing of Thomas Hobbes, state is extremely powerful. State has all the power, and people have only one right, that is right to life. And even Thomas Hobbes supports the idea that a state can take your life, but only that process of taking life should not be arbitrary. That means by going through some legal mechanism, state can take your life. For example, a person like Hitler, he can take your life by passing a law. There is no issue in that as per Thomas Hobbes. But after Thomas Hobbes, we see a writer, a philosopher, John Locke, one of the finest philosophers of English race. He was the first person who gave extensive treatment to this concept of right. In fact, in the writing of John Locke only, we see the emergence of separation of power, theory of natural rights, right to property, liberty, civil society, and a very we can say a very good support to social contract also, etc. So John Locke also supports three types of right, that is right to liberty. Then he supports the idea of right to property, and then he supports the idea of right to life. That means liberty, property, and life were three rights which were told to us by John Locke. And among these three rights, John Locke gave the most important position to right to property. And according to John Locke, a person cannot enjoy liberty, he cannot enjoy life unless he is having property. And so he has given aggressive support to right to property. In a way, John Locke was, we can say, initial philosopher of capitalism, who gave aggressive support to right to property. But after that, John Locke, we can see a series of rights, package of rights, and slowly this concept of rights keep on emerging. And the rights, we can say, in a very packaged form, we found for the first time in US Constitution, Bill of Rights. So this is about a brief history of rights. So what are rights? Rights are nothing, but rights are something which you get from the outer world. It can be cultural rights, it can be social right, religious right, it can be political rights, economic rights, etc. So right is something which, as an individual or as a community, get from something, and duty is when you have to do something. All right. So this is all about right. Now if we talk about fundamental right, then why fundamental right? Just now I gave you some examples of right. Rights can be constitutional rights, legal rights, social rights, economic rights, cultural rights. So many rights can be there. But out of all of such rights, the rights which are fundamental in nature, those are called fundamental right. So what is fundamental right? Fundamental right is a right which an individual or a community get as a fundamental support from the establishment, from the state, from the government, or from the constitution. So this is about a brief definition and introduction about fundamental right. Now let us talk about fundamental rights in particular context of India. So Indians have fought for independence, and India got its independence after a very long struggle. And when India got independence from British people, India became an independent country. Now how do we know that India is an independent country? If you see the Constitution of India, then there is a chapter on President of India which speaks about power of President. There are some chapters which speaks about power of Parliament, power of Judiciary. But fundamental right, that is part 3, is the only chapter which speaks about citizens. And when a constitution speaks about citizens, then we get to know that the real right is now with the citizens, and citizens are in a way sovereign body, and citizens are there to make the laws. In crux, citizens are truly independent. So fundamental rights shows to us how independent a country is and how the citizens of that particular country lives in a particular stage. If you see the statement of Lasky, then Lasky says that a state is known by the rights it maintains. That means Lasky says that we can define a state, a country, simply by the rights. When we'll see the rights which a country provides to the citizen, we can define that state. That what kind of a state is it? It is a liberal state, whether it is a welfare state, it is a democratic state, it is a, we can say, dictator state. What kind of a state it is, we can simply see by looking at what? By looking at fundamental rights. So in India, this concept of fundamental rights, it came when? It came after independence, and when our constitutional father, they enacted a constitution, they gave a very due space, a very deserving space to the chapter that is called fundamental rights in part 3. Now we have got this inspiration of fundamental rights from Bill of Rights of United States, but we in many terms are ahead of United States. Why we are ahead of United States? Because in Indian constitutions, rights have been described in a very comprehensive manner. Such beautiful elaboration is there in the Indian constitution that it is widely accepted that in terms of fundamental rights, in terms of explanation and all, it is even more deserving, more better in comparison to the constitution of US, even if we took inspiration from US. These rights are called Magna Carta of Indian Constitution. That means it has given a kind of new movement, a new life, a new ray of hope that to all the Indian citizens. Now, one technical definition is important here. Why these are fundamental rights? So these are fundamental rights because all other rights draw direct or indirect inspiration from fundamental right itself. For example, right to life. So right to life and personal liberty, that has basically status of fundamental right. But by the use of this right to life, there are many rights which has been interpreted by liberal interpretation of Supreme Court of India. And that is why it is said that all other rights directly or indirectly draws inspiration from the fundamental right. All right. And this is even more fundamental in one more sense. For example, say if I talk about medical rights, or if you talk about legal rights, or say if you talk about cultural rights, then these type of rights have some kind of section of people. For example, if I say a particular cultural right, then that will be applicable to a section of people who follow that culture. But when we say fundamental right, it is applicable to every citizen in this country, irrespective of their religion, race, caste, sex, etc. All right, and that is why fundamental rights are very important, and they deserve our respect and attention. Now in this class I will just give you a brief idea about fundamental rights one by one, and I am not going to enter deep into the fundamental rights. That I will do in the subsequent classes, but first understand what is fundamental right. So next let us start with the salient features of fundamental rights. What are these fundamental rights, and what are those things which make these fundamental rights unique in some sense? Alright. So the very first thing is that these fundamental rights are justiciable in nature. This is the first thing. Now what is the meaning of justiciable in nature? Say for example, if you get religious right, or you say social right, then that might not be justiciable, but fundamental rights are justiciable. That means in case of violation of fundamental right, you can approach to a particular institution for redressal of that violation. That means in case of violation, you have the right to approach the court or any of the designated institution which the parliament prescribes. This is the first thing, that fundamental rights are justiciable in nature. Now second thing about fundamental right is that fundamental right doesn't discriminate. That means it is applicable to all the citizens irrespective of his caste, race, religion, sex, ethnicity, etc. And every Indian, simply because they are Indian, they enjoy all of these fundamental rights. Third feature, we can say that there are many fundamental rights which are even given to foreigners, or we can say aliens. That means fundamental rights are enjoyed by citizens also, and fundamental rights are enjoyed by non-citizens also. Then next feature, we can say that to make any kind of changes in this fundamental right, the parliament will have to go to the route of constitutional amendment. That means parliament cannot snatch this right simply by passing an ordinary legislation, but it needs to be from the route of constitutional amendment act. And parliament can make amendment to these fundamental rights subjected to the doctrine of basic structure. That means whenever parliament will try to make any kind of amendment, any kind of change to these fundamental rights, then it will have to face judiciary, Supreme Court of India, and Supreme Court of India will decide that whether that particular law of parliament which try to disturb the ethos of fundamental rights is really constitutional or not in terms of basic structure. That is, some parts of the constitution cannot be changed. For example, if parliament will try to take away, say, article 25, which is nothing but which is a textbook of secularism, then parliament will have to face judiciary, and judiciary will say that secularism is the basic structure of Indian constitution, and you cannot take the fundamental right in this way. Then next feature, if you talk about fundamental rights, then fundamental rights are those rights which has a very special space. Why is it so? Because in case the fundamental right is violated, directly you can approach to Supreme Court of India. That is in case of violation of other right. Say for example, if your right, say we can say right of a student, if a particular right of a student is there which has been given, say, by Ministry of Education, and if that right is violated, then you can approach to some institution or some lower court. But in case of violation of this fundamental right, directly you can approach to Supreme Court of India, and Supreme Court of India has constitutional obligation to take your petition. Supreme Court of India cannot deny about your petition. So this is the beauty of fundamental right, that directly on the violation you can approach to Supreme Court of India. But you can also approach to lower court, you can also approach to some other institutions, but you have the right that you can approach even to Supreme Court of India without any if or buts. Alright. Next, in fundamental right, there is a concept of reasonable restriction. It means that fundamental rights are not absolute right, but these are qualified right. What does it mean? It means that that people have the right to enjoy these rights, but there are many, we cannot say many, but there are some terms and conditions. Say for example, Article 19 gives you a power that you can have, you have the right, freedom to speech and expression, and so you have the liberty to write anything, you have the liberty to say anything. but you do not have the liberty to abuse anyone. You do not have the liberty to abuse a particular caste or religion. And then law will come into picture and they will stop you uh, under the text of reasonable restriction. That means the law can put a kind of reasonable restriction when the law feels that you, while enjoying your fundamental rights, you are harming the fundamental rights of someone else. All right. But in this particular case, whether the restriction imposed by any particular institution is reasonable or not, then this will be decided by judiciary. Say for example, nowadays in COVID-19, lot of restrictions have been there with respect to our movement, with respect to our speech and all, with respect to even our profession. All these are fundamental rights, but these rights have been curtailed by the state. So whether these rights are reasonable or not, this is again the call of court. So if you feel that your right to profession has been hampered by government of India or any state government under this pretext of COVID-19, then you can directly approach to Supreme Court of India that I have the right to profession and government is putting a kind of restriction. Then Supreme Court of India will decide that whether this imposition, this restriction by government of India or the state government is reasonable or not. That means the constitution has tried to make a perfect balance, a fine balance between the rights and law and order. That means the rights of citizen and responsibility of a state that has a fine order. All right. Now next feature about fundamental right is that fundamental right can also be curtailed during the time of emergency. For example, if national emergency is there, which India witnessed from 1975 to 77, in then also that means there is only one period when emergency was imposed in India. In such period, whenever emergency will be imposed, then again government can put lot of restrictions on your fundamental rights. In fact, almost all the fundamental rights can be suspended except Article 20 and Article 21. What is Article 20, 21? I will explain you after this lecture. So, in case of national emergency, state can put certain restrictions on you. The next feature of fundamental right is that some of the fundamental rights have been directed to the state and some of the fundamental rights have been directed even to the individuals. For example, as per Article 16, a state shall not discriminate while distribution of public employment. So, whom this fundamental right is directing? Fundamental right is directing to the state. But in Article 17, which bans completely untouchability, Article 17 directs to the citizens also. So, we can say that as per Article 17, untouchability has been banned and no one can practice untouchability. No one, that means any citizen cannot practice this untouchability. So, we can see that some of the rights are against the state and some of the rights are against whom? Against individuals. Alright. Then one more thing is very special feature is there, which is again a very unique feature of Indian Constitution, that to get redressal of violation of fundamental right is itself a fundamental right. That means if your fundamental right is violated and you want justice, then that mechanism of justice itself has been given the status of fundamental right. So that is again beauty of fundamental rights. Now next feature of fundamental right is that there are a lot of exceptions. Because India is a diverse country, there is a lot of diversification with respect to caste, religion, geography, ethnicity, and so all these diversities have been kept in mind by our constitutional fathers, and whatever provisions have been made in fundamental rights, there have been certain exceptions. For example, Article 16 says that a state cannot discriminate on the basis of what? On the basis of gender, sex, caste, etc. But at the same time, Article 16 also provides you the liberty that you can provide reservation on the basis of caste. You can provide reservation on the basis of your backwardness. Even economic backwardness has been added now. You can provide certain conditions to uplift the status of women and child. So these are the exceptions which have been provided in the fundamental rights. Now one more important feature of fundamental rights is that there are many sections of Indian citizens who have not been given fundamental rights. For example, say for example, Article 19 says that every citizen has the right to speech, the right to express yourself. But what about the intelligence officer? An officer who is in RAW, an officer who is in IB, we cannot expect that officer to speak anything in the front of media. So here the state will come and put a kind of restriction on him. And he cannot say that I am also a citizen and I also enjoy this right, because the state has the complete right to put a restriction towards that person. This is again a unique feature of fundamental rights of India. Alright. So in this way we can say that fundamental right is a complete package of rights, and that is why I told you that it is even more elaborative, it is even more explanatory in comparison to US Constitution or any of the constitution throughout the world. Alright. So I think that up to now you must have understood the basic idea of fundamental rights. You must have understood that what are some basic contours of fundamental rights, framework of fundamental rights, and now I will come to one by one all the fundamental rights. And I told you in the starting that I am not going to explain you each of the fundamental rights in depth. I will just give you an idea so that once we will start this chapter into the deep manner, you can understand all the rights in better sense. Alright, so let's start all the rights. Okay, so now see here, the first article is Article 12. So I told you that fundamental right is from Article 12 to Article 35. So this is the first part, that is Article 12. Article 12 is nothing but Article 12 tells us the definition of state. Now why the definition of state is important? Because just now I told you that in fundamental rights, state is important because state will only provide you the rights. State has lot of responsibility. State will put a kind of reasonable restriction. So if an institution come tomorrow and puts a reasonable restriction on your right, then you must know that whether that institution is a state or not. And that is why Article 12 defines what is the meaning of state. And the definition of state which is given in the Article 12 has to be applied only in case of fundamental rights and not with respect to other provisions of Indian Constitution. So Article 12 takes a wider, we can say wider definition of state, and it defines almost every institution, every arms, every dimension of government. For example, central government, state government, legislature, executive, municipal government, district collector, even a private body, if it has the responsibility to deliver some government function, then that will also qualify the definition of state. Alright. So Article 12, you got it, and I told you that I am not teaching you deeply, I am just giving you an idea. In subsequent class I will take this deeply. Then come to Article 13. Article 13 is a very important article. Why? Because Article 13 says that when Parliament will make any law, and if that law tries to disturb fundamental right, or it is inconsistent with any of the fundamental right, then that law will be declared null, void, ultra vires. Alright. But Supreme Court of India in its subsequent judgment said that a law can be made even if the law wants to disturb fundamental right, but Supreme Court of India has got here the power to review that law, that particular law is fair and just or not. Alright. So indirectly Article 13 gives power to Supreme Court of India to decide that whether any law which disturbs fundamental right is just and fair or not. And that is why it is also said that Supreme Court of India is defender of our constitution or defender of our fundamental rights. Then here one more thing, as you can see that on my this whiteboard, I have divided these rights into particular blocks. And actually in our Indian Constitution, originally there were 7 rights on a broad form, but one right was later repealed, it was put somewhere else. I will just discuss that. But as of today we have 6 fundamental rights in a broad term. So broad terms is very important here. Rights are many, but on broader blocks we can divide all the rights into 6 blocks. The first is right to equality, then we have right to freedom, Then we have right against exploitation. Then we have right to freedom of religion. Then we have cultural and educational right, right to property, it is no more now in fundamental rights, and then at last we have right to constitutional remedies. So in these 6 blocks, on a very broad level, we can divide our fundamental rights. Now come to one by one, right to equality. So as the name suggests, in this part, the Indian Constitution has basically tried to give you all those fundamental rights which pushes equality in our society. Alright. So the first is Article 14. Article 14 has a very general language. General language in the sense that Article 14 speaks about that every citizen is equal in front of law, and law treats every citizen equally, and law doesn't discriminate citizens on the basis of race, caste, place of birth or sex. And at the same time, Article 14 also gives the power, or we can say gives a space to rule of law. That means by interpretation of Article 14, we come to the conclusion that in India there is rule of law. Be you ever so high, the law is always above you. Doesn't matter you are President of India, Prime Minister of India, Chief Minister of a state, you are very rich, doesn't matter. Rule of law is there in our country, and be you ever so high, the law is always above you. The Constitution is the king as per Article 14. Now if you talk about this Article 15, then Article 15 particularly speaks about discrimination. It says that a state cannot discriminate on the basis of race, religion, caste, sex or place of birth. So what is the difference between 14 and 15? 14 speaks about general equality, but 15 has brought this word discrimination, and it prohibits the state to commit any kind of discrimination. Alright, now come to Article 16. So Article 16 speaks about public employment, and it says that a state shall not discriminate while distributing the public employment. And that is why when you people are preparing for UPSC, you know that UPSC gives everyone the right to equality in terms of public employment. Then come to Article 17. Article 17 basically bans untouchability of all form. That means the practice of untouchability, which was there in our country for thousands of years, it has been categorically banned by Constitution of India. Now, Constitution as such nowhere defined what is the meaning of untouchability, but Supreme Court and several high courts have from time to time defined untouchability. And untouchability means the same practice which was in India for thousands of years, and here untouchability doesn't cover untouchability like social boycott. Alright, so this thing again you have to keep in our mind. Now come to Article 18. So Article 18 is nothing but Article 18 abolishes all form of titles. So you must have heard that before independence there were many people in our country who were known as Rai Bahadur, Kunwar Sen, okay, Raja Dhiraj, blah blah, so many names were given. Sir was also a title. So we are studying what? Right to equality. So Constitution says that no one should have any kind of privilege and everyone is equal in the eye of law. And that is why now there cannot be any concept of providing titles by government. But there are two exceptions. Titles can be provided on the basis of military achievement or on the basis of education. So for example, if you give the title of doctor to someone because he has done some research and all, then that is simply you are endorsing his merit and nothing else. Similarly, some national awards, for example Bharat Ratna or Padam Shri, Padam Vibhushan, those awards can also be given to the people, but it is expected that those people will not misuse the names of these prestigious awards by putting that in front of their names. So that's all about right to equality, that is Article 14 to Article 18. Now let us go for further articles. Now come to the second block of article, that is right to freedom. So first block of article was about right to equality. Now we are where we are in right to freedom. So first is Article 19. Now Article 19 is a package right. We always call it a package right. It gives many rights at one place. For example, by the use of Article 19, citizens of India have the right of freedom of speech and expression. They have freedom to form assembly without any arms. They have freedom to form association, unions, cooperative. They have freedom of movement. They have freedom to not to join any organization. They have freedom to express themselves not only verbally but by written, but by sign, by some book, etc. By this Article 19 only, freedom of press also can be said to be a right of freedom. Alright, that is Article 19. Now come to Article 20. Article 20 is all about freedom with respect to conviction for some offences. So when a person is there and say that person has been convicted by court, then there are few rights which that person also has. For example, that person cannot be punished for any crime which is not there in the operation during the commitment of that crime. That means, say for example, a person commits some XYZ crime today and that XYZ crime has not been mentioned in the Indian Penal Code, then he cannot be punished for that crime simply by passing a law tomorrow. Okay, but this is not applicable for civil laws, it is applicable only for criminal laws. Again, a person cannot be punished for the same offense twice. Say for example, a person has been held for some kind of say molestation, and he has been punished by court of Delhi. Then again he cannot be punished by court of Mumbai because he has been already convicted for the same crime. Now come to Article 21. So Article 21 is said to be the most important right of fundamental rights, because Supreme Court of India has observed that had the constitutional father given only one right, that is Article 21, then all other rights would have been interpreted or liberated simply from Article 21. Why this is so important? Because Article 21 says that no man can be deprived from his personal liberty except by procedure established by law. In short, or in crux, we can say every Indian has the right to live a dignified life, and that is why Supreme Court of India by liberal interpretation has given a package of unending rights under this Article 21. For example, right to privacy, right to silence, right to clean water, right to clean air, right to environment, right to speedy trial. So there are so many rights, a package of rights. All those rights have been given under roof of only one right, that is Article 21. Then Article 21A. So Article 21 has been added by 86 Constitutional Amendment Act, and as per Article 21A, again every Indian citizen from 6 to 14 years of age has the fundamental right to get education, and it is a responsibility of the state to actualize this. And so we also have right to education, which was passed in 2009, which gives every Indian children from 6 to 14 years of age fundamental right of education. Then we have Article 22. So Article 22 is freedom from detention and arrest. So Article 20 comes into picture after conviction, but Article 22 comes into picture before the arrest. For example, a citizen when a citizen is arrested, a citizen has certain rights. For example, he has the right to consult his lawyer, he has the right to know the cause of his crime, he has the right to be produced to the magistrate within 24 hours. Okay, so these rights are given to a citizen in case of, we can say, freedom with respect to arrest and detention. So that's all about right to freedom, the second block of right. Now come to third, that is right against exploitation. So as the name suggests, this is nothing but this is the right which has been given against the exploitation. So Article 23 speaks about trafficking of human being and bonded labor. So as per Article 23, trafficking is banned. You cannot go for trafficking. Trafficking is illegal, and also bonded labor has been abolished by Constitution in fundamental right itself, and bonded labor is not only illegal but it is also unconstitutional. Then as per Article 24, children in the factory, they cannot be employed, children cannot be employed in the factory, and that has also been completely banned. Now come to the next article, that is right to freedom of religion. So this is a package of right which has been given in case of to all the citizens, so that they can freely practice their religion without any interference. And this is a textbook of secular character of our country. So let us first come to Article 25. So Article 25 gives every citizen the right to conscience, the right to practice, the right to profess, the right to propagate his religion. What is the meaning of conscience? So he can make his relation with respect to God very, very personal. So he has the complete right to worship the God in the way he wants. That is the freedom of conscience. He has the freedom to profess. That means he can clearly spell out which religion he follows, and and there is no requirement of hiding that religion. He can practice that religion. That means he can do worship in any form that he wants. He can do all these kinds of things, rituals and all, in explicit manner. Then he has the right to propagate also. He can also convince other people that join my religion is a great religion. There is no harm in that. But it doesn't mean that he has the right to convert other person into his religion by the use of force or by the use of some we can say allurement. That is not allowed. Otherwise he can propagate his religion. Now come to Article 26. So as per Article 26, any sect, religion has a right. What is that right? Right to manage religious affairs. That means if a religion is there, then that particular religion can open its ashram, open its temple, publish its book, make some kind of rules and regulations. So for example, temples like we can say Shirdi temple or temples like Balaji temple, these all temples work in a way of autonomous institution. So from where they got this right? They got this right from Article 26. And Article 26 is applicable to both minor religion also and major religion also. It doesn't mean that this right is only with the minor religion, but this is applicable to any kind of religion, any section of people. Then we have Article 27. So Article 27 is very simple. Article 27 says that no citizen will be compelled to pay taxes for promotion of any religion. That means if your tax is being used for promotion of any particular religion, then you are not bound to pay the tax. But you might be thinking, then how come Government of India is building a temple or spending money on, we can also say, temple, or by providing subsidy to even minorities? How this is possible? It is possible because citizens can pay tax. Citizens have to pay tax when the government is not making any kind of discrimination while using that tax. So government will not have to use that tax for promotion of a particular religion, but government naturally has the right to spend the tax equally, that means without any kind of discrimination. Then come to Article 28. So again, Article 21 gives religious we can say any particular religion to go for protect and the freedom of religious instruction. That means it can go for some kind of institute, it can start some kind of education setup and all for promotion of religion, but it cannot force anyone for its religious instruction. Then the fifth right, that is cultural and educational rights. So in cultural and educational rights we have Article 20 and Article 30. Now Article 29 and 30, these are applicable for minorities, but minorities not in terms of religion, but minorities in terms of religion also, and minority in terms of linguistic identity also. And in fact, if a particular culture is there and that particular culture is having some distinct identity, some unique identity, then they can also get their right, that is cultural and educational right, under Article 29 and Article 30. So by the use of Article 29 and 30, any particular community has the right to preserve their culture, has the right to form any kind of institution or form any kind of mechanism so that they can protect and preserve their culture. Alright, so that has been allowed as a fundamental right. Now come to right to property, that is under Article 31. So I told you that Article 31 is no more now, and right to property in India is no more a fundamental right, but right to property is a legal right, because right to property has been shifted to Article 300A. What does it mean? It means that if your property, the right to property is being violated, then you cannot approach directly to Supreme Court of India by Article 32, but you have to take ordinary legal course. That is the only meaning. Now come to article next package of right, that is right to constitutional remedy. So I told you that in India, in case of violation of fundamental right, to get the justice itself a kind of fundamental right, and so as per article 32, you can directly approach to Supreme Court of India to get justice in case your fundamental right is violated. And Baba Sahib B.R. Ambedkar has said that article 32 is heart and soul of fundamental right, because it gives you the right to get justice, and if justice will not be there, only right will be there, then that the right alone can do nothing, and that right will be of no use, and that is why justice has to be there. That means article 32 gives a kind of weightage, gives a kind of legal cover to the fundamental rights. Then article 33. So as per article 33, it says about exceptions with respect to military forces, paramilitary forces, central forces, etc. That means the rights like freedom of speech and expression, freedom to form union, freedom to join political party, freedom to join some association, freedom to speak to the media, these type of rights can be curtailed for armed forces, okay, or central forces, paramilitary forces, etc. Now article 34 speaks about martial law. So martial law is what? Martial law, by literal interpretation, martial law simply means military rule. Though the constitution doesn't use the word military rule, it only uses the word martial law. So as per martial law, if martial law will be imposed in the country, then again all of these fundamental rights will get disturbed. And what exactly will happen to this fundamental right, this is not very clear. This is because this is very vague. And fortunately in India we haven't witnessed this martial law at the pan-India level, and that is why it is still requires some kind of interpretation. So let us wait for that day. The last right is article 35. So it basically says that the parliament has the power to bring a particular kind of law to give legal backing or to actualize or to translate these rights into action. And that is why by the use of article 35, Government of India has brought some laws to ban trafficking, to ban the working of children in factory. Even a law is there to ban this untouchability. So that's all about all the fundamental rights. So I believe that you have understood the fundamental rights, at least in the skeleton form, at least in the framework. And now in the next class I will put flesh in this in this chapter, so that you can understand fundamental rights in a much deeper way. So we'll see you in the next class. Thank you very much. Thank you.